There is nothing worse than being deep into your graduate process. And as you're trying to progress, you have people sabotaging you, tearing down your self-esteem, and making your graduate process so much harder than what it already is. And unfortunately, these people more times than not are not some randos or your sworn enemies. Instead, they're often your faculty mentors and advisors. So today we are discussing red flags when dealing with faculty at your graduate program, so you will know when to get out. Now, the first red flag can feel pretty harmless, but it is so important to make sure that you are aware that this is just a stepping stone to other future problems. And that is if they are disinterested in you and or your research. And the reason that is because your faculty advisors or your faculty mentors are supposed to be the people that guide you through your academic progress. But if you're meeting with somebody who makes you feel like they think your research is dumb or not important, or even more disinteresting or even more upsetting is that they make you feel like you're dumb or not important, then it's important to recognize this is not a normal part of graduate school. Your faculty are not there to make you feel like they're indifferent about your existence. They should be invested in you. So if you're going into faculty meetings and they seem to not pay attention to what you're saying, they seem to be flippant about your ideas or your questions, or even possibly they may not even want to meet with you, or they say things like this is a waste of time, or you should just do these things, that is a big red flag that they are probably not the faculty mentor or faculty advisor for you. Now, what's weird about disinterested faculty is they can oftentimes be very nice to you. So it's important to not be enamored with their kindness and be very aware if they are acting as if your work and your existence isn't as important as another graduate student or as their own work. Making sure that you are a priority to your faculty is a very important aspect to make sure that you are going to have the healthiest experience as a graduate student. Which leads to the next red flag, and that is if they are mean. And I know you're thinking, what is this, elementary school? And yes, it is that simple. Some faculty are just plain out rude. And you as a graduate student, no matter how smart they are, no matter how helpful everybody swears they are, no matter how cool or big of a name they are, you don't deserve people to be mean to you. So if you have a faculty that is tearing you down, saying mean things to you, and is just plain out rude in your discussion or how their approaches to you, you don't and shouldn't work with them, because it's not going to get easier with time. And even if it does, you still kind of get some, PTSD or some real psychological responses to being treated poorly for years just to maybe in the future be treated kindly. You deserve to be treated kindly immediately, day one, the moment you walk onto campus. So if a faculty is rude or mean to you, that is a huge red flag, and you probably shouldn't keep them as a faculty advisor. Now, this next red flag doesn't seem like such a big of a deal in the beginning of your graduate program, but as you go deeper and deeper into the process, you will need your faculty mentors or advisors in very particular ways. And that's why if your faculty has poor communication skills, you should see that as a red flag. And communication could be anything from, again, speaking to you rudely, like I just said, or not responding to emails, taking months and months and months to return feedback to your work, giving you good feedback so you can improve your work, things like that. And this is why it's important to be aware of this. During your first few years of your graduate process, when you're in your coursework or when you're doing assignments for other faculty, you don't actually need a lot of feedback or support from your faculty mentor. But once you go into the thesis writing portion of your graduate process, your faculty advisor, your faculty mentor is the #1 person that is grading you or deciding if you pass or fail. So if there's somebody you can't get a hold of because they don't respond to emails, because they don't text you, that literally can extend your graduate process by years. And you think I'm exaggerating, but if you're writing a long thesis, and you send them a draft and they take 6 months to respond and there's a ton of changes, that might cause you to take another 5 to 6 months to fix it. And then you have to submit it and hope they respond right. So in that way, it can totally prolong your process. In other things, if they have to sign documentation to make sure you're filing or that you're advancing to the next steps, if they're not doing that administrative work in a timely fashion, again, it can literally extend your time as a graduate student. There are also other communication factors, like if you need help with something and you're asking for feedback and they don't give you really good feedback. They may say, this is good, this is bad. I wouldn't say this like that. Or why would you ask that question? Those types of feedbacks, while it is giving you some information, isn't really help guiding you into being a more well-rounded or more prepared student or more prepared scholar. And so it's important to also recognize that communication is more than just back and forth with each other, but it's also making sure that they are imparting knowledge or helping you understand what is it that you are expected to do and how you should go about doing it. And all of these things, again, is to help you progress. So while communication seems like a little thing that's not a big deal, I guarantee the longer you're in grad school, the more frustrating it is to have somebody who just won't do their job. Well, this next toxic trait is actually held by a lot of people, not just faculty, but it's very important that you catch this early when dealing with faculty because it can take a toll on your mental and physical well-being. And that is, are they ignoring your boundaries? As graduate students, we are coming into this process as adults, as individuals, as people with our own lives, responsibilities, and expectations. And so when you have a faculty mentor that is putting a lot of pressure on you or violating the strict boundaries or rules that you put on to help you manage your graduate process, it can very quickly cause your graduate process to go out of whack or feel unmanageable and to feel overwhelmed. And that is not what you want to do. So it's important to recognize it can be something as simple as, I don't respond to emails on the weekends, or I don't have meetings with faculty after 5 p.m. during the weekdays because I don't. But if they see those things and they're constantly pushing those boundaries by blowing up your email inbox on Sunday nights to ask you to do things on Mondays, or if they're constantly saying, hey, can you do these things for me at 6 p.m. on Thursday, or things like that, then you're seeing that they don't necessarily respect your time and your boundaries. And that can definitely be a slippery slope. It can cause you to feel exhausted, and it can also cause you to feel devalued as a person. So it's important that while, one, you are setting strong and concrete boundaries and you stick with them, but it's even more important that you find faculty that respect your boundaries and don't push beyond them or don't try to challenge them. This can be difficult at first, but once you figure out which faculties are respectful of your space and time, and I promise they do exist, graduate school gets so much easier. Directly related to ignoring your boundaries, a red flag of toxic faculty or toxic faculty advisors is if they are overworking you. And this could be literally within your jobs as a graduate student researcher, as a TA, as their support. But it can also be just like expectations as a graduate student. Are they asking you to do too much? Are they asking you to spend too much money in the name of science or in the name of your research? Are they having too much expectations that is beyond your capacity and they're also not supporting you to do that? This is important to be aware of because oftentimes in this capitalistic system where we are expected to produce, and people are expected to consume and consume, it's very easy to feel like that's just how the world works. But it doesn't. Your job as a graduate student is to do your independent research and to graduate. It's not to help your faculty write their manuscript. It's not to help another faculty member run an entire program that they decided to make up 3 years ago and now they're way in over their head, so they want you to do everything for them. It's not your job to win grants for your department. It's not your job to do anything but to make sure you graduate. Now, while solidarity and supporting each other is very important, it's just really helpful to make sure you are picking faculty that are not exploiting you. It's also important to make sure your faculty understand what are your capacities to succeed or to do something, not just in working as a TA or a GSR, but also as a graduate student. You don't want somebody telling you that you have to publish 6 things every year if you feel like you can't do that. You don't want somebody telling you that if you want to be a good graduate student, you have to do 4 conference presentations, but you only have the funding to do 1. those types of things can really add a lot of outside insecurities and doubts that are not yours to carry. So by finding a faculty that doesn't believe in overworking their students and that does believe in setting realistic expectations, it can help make your process way more smooth. Now, I do talk about this a lot on my channel, and that's because it's just that important, and I say this every time, but if you don't have funding, a lot of graduate success becomes just exponentially harder. So you want a faculty that is going to support you in this way and care about you in this way. A red flag of a faculty mentor or advisor is that they are just completely disinterested in your financial stability. Now I know you're thinking, wait, this is academics, this is grad school, why would a faculty mentor care about my finances? Well, here's why. Part of the job of your faculty advisor is to help you as a graduate student get funding. They need to make sure that you have the financial support to conduct your research, to stay in school, and to eat. So if you have a faculty advisor or mentor that is not helping you look for grants, that is not thinking about your financial stability, how to help you find opportunities, get TA-ships and GSRs and jobs, then you have somebody that's kind of saying they don't really care if you sink or swim. Now I know that might seem like a very extreme situation, but a lot of super successful graduate students that seem to be winning all these big awards aren't winning them on their own. Many of them have, and I would argue most of them have, faculty advisors or faculty mentors that are guiding them through the grant process to make sure they are successful. So if you feel like you are approaching your financial stability, grant finding, funding all together by yourself with no support, that is a huge red flag, and you should probably find somebody else to help you, because it's not going to get easier with the more work that you have to do, especially if you're somebody like me who has to do field work in another country. Another red flag that you definitely need to make sure you are looking out for is when you talk about your faculty advisor or mentor, do other people respond negatively? If you are constantly talking about, oh, my advisor, Dr. So-and-so or Professor So-and-so, and people's response to you is like, oh, honey, or oh, I hate them, or oh my goodness, how are you okay? That should be a red flag. Even if you have a kind of positive experience with them at the beginning, by hearing all of those negative things, you may want to ask more, like, why would you say that? What makes you have that reaction? Or if you hear those negative responses and are like, oh, I feel validated, red flag. If people generally find your faculty advisor or mentor unpleasant, then it's probably because they're an unpleasant person. This isn't to say that faculty mentors or advisors should be a popularity contest, and it's also important to know that generally women of color, specifically Black and Indigenous women, experience a lot more discrimination of this way and may have a negative kind of persona in the department just because of how racial and gender discrimination happens. But generally, if it's very constant across people, from graduate students, people outside of your department, department heads and faculty, then that might be a red flag to really reconsider how tightly or how closely you're going to work with this faculty. The thing about recognizing and understanding toxic traits in faculty mentors and faculty just more generally is that we have to recognize this thing we call academia, or this system we call academia, is really about power and hierarchies. And so when we are graduate students, we are kind of conditioned to accept ourselves as less than, or as people who don't know things, and we need to prove ourselves or move up the ranks of this hierarchy. And while kind of this is true because we're all students and learning, we also need to recognize just because it's set up as this hierarchy, that doesn't mean that we as people lose our dignity. And so it's important to make sure that we are recognizing that we should be treated kindly, justly, and with respect. Now, there are so many other ways that faculty can be toxic. So part 2 of this video is coming out very soon. And if you're interested in that, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you found at least 2 things useful, hit the thumbs up so YouTube will share this videos with others who may need it. And if you're somebody really interested on how to prepare or avoid having toxic faculty, I would check out this video that talks about the questions you should ask the first time you meet with your faculty mentor to make sure that y'all are vibing. I want to thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next week.